Tammy Spence volunteered for 10 years with Orlando Regional Health Trauma Unit and a year at Cook County's ER Trauma Unit in Chicago. She worked consistently with women involved in the sex trade background. She graduated from Ohio State University with a dual BS in child development and death and dying with an emphasis on trauma-informed care. She is currently a transition team coordinator with Inside Out Jail Ministries and is a founder of She Has a Name, hashtag the Bella and Danny Project. She is an advisory board member of To My Place, and she has received the Central Florida Victim Service Center Community Service Award in 2018. Tammy, welcome, and you have the floor.
I really appreciate you all inviting me to speak. I do not have slides. I didn't want to go that route. I didn't want to lecture. I actually just wanted my passion to kind of pull forward, and I wanted us to pretend like we were in a room really talking about how we can improve the environment. My specialty is women and the United States. The United States operates different than any other place in the world on human trafficking. So what I do is I'm a transition team coordinator. It's actually been 11 years that I've been doing that, and I operate inside a jail. So Cindy and I always laugh. I'll call her right after and I'll tell her I've been in jail all day. What I do is I meet women that are looking to change the direction of their life. But the truth is, most of them don't want out. We've decided after a long journey that I'm not about quantity, I'm about quality. And the women know that I'm going to walk the entire journey with them, whether they're ready or they're not. So I think I'm one of the few people that really knows where women are running, who they're with, and how it operates. So one of the things that I found as I started this is that there's two things. In the United States, we don't kidnap our girls. I mean, it happens, but not like you think it. Not like you think it would. And the other piece is that the outside community wants pretty. Because if you're kidnapped, it's a sad story. And in reality, in the United States, we don't have to kidnap them because we set them up for failure. And by that, I mean, we have molestation issues. And that's such an ugly topic. And nobody wants to really deal with it. So we know that 1 in 3 women have been molested. That's what's been reported. In the jails, we know it's closer to 98% of all women that are arrested have been molested at an early age. Why that, not if you're molested does not mean that you're going to commit a crime. What I'm saying is that that's the common thread. Yes, it can be poverty and it can be the issues with the juvenile system or all these other pieces, but the common core is molestation. And what happens in molestation is that it messes with the frontal lobe of your brain. And the frontal lobe of your brain is where you understand consequences and where you handle things. And it doesn't really mature until you're in your 20s. And women actually, it matures earlier than men. Once a molestation happens, unless they get the right kind of care, trauma-informed care, it doesn't heal. So they're constantly on the run and they're making decisions and they don't even know why they're making the decisions. The other piece of this big puzzle is their normal is very different than your normal. And we all grow up in environments where we only know what we know. And so that's what I'm always telling them. When I meet a person, I explain about molestation and how what happens with it is a common question I will ask is, when did you start using? Which is a weird way to segue into this whole conversation, but they'll say like 8, 9, 10, which is, you all know, is a very uncommon thing. And so that always happens either if there's been a sexual trauma or if it's very prevalent in the house. Once I go into the sexual trauma piece, they're very honest with what happened. And then I explain to them that really they were set up for failure and all the things that they've experienced along the way is why they are where they are. So when we talk about rescuing women, and I really hate that term in the United States, they don't want rescued here. The statistics show that it takes about 7 times for women to heal. We have to treat the addiction first and then treat the trauma second. The beautiful part of jail, as crazy as it sounds, is that the addiction is in full swing. And so they can't make any decisions that are really healthy for them until about 6 weeks in. So in 6 or 7 weeks, I can start meeting with them weekly, and that's really other options that they have for their life. And they can't see past where they are inside a jail. They're also being contacted by the men that they work with that are supported them, that's the only love that they've had. It's a very complicated world, and it's hard for people to understand how they could go back to the kind of abuse. But again, you only know what you know. And so one of the pieces of working with the women that I work with, and hence the name, she has a name, because they're more than just a number, and they're more than just a survivor. They have names and families and hopes and dreams, and nobody actually gives them the opportunity to work through all of that or figure that out. We want to fix the problem instead of allowing them the opportunity to have all the time that they need to fix it. And I hope that, or heal themselves. And I hope that makes little sense. So most of the time, they, as I said, they don't want the help, but they know that I'm going to be there the next time and the next time and the next time. And they will reach out every single time. So I've built long-term relationships with a lot of women, as Cindy can attest to. COVID made it very difficult on the outside, but jails opened back up. I know that my program, and I only have 3 women that actually do this work with me. We see more women in a month than most organizations work within a year. So what we do is we really get to know them, their loves, what they want, what they're looking for. When they're involved in a big case, it's really important, the kind of program that you get for them, where you go. Like, each program is different. So you want to match them with what's going to work for them, where their healing is going to start from. And like I said, each program has a different way of doing things. The other thing you always want to know is who's at the program, who runs where, who does what. And again, I hope I'm making sense. That's important also, because when we talk about people, places, and things, you can't keep reminding them of the people that they were with, or the recovery doesn't happen as well. It doesn't happen as smoothly as we had hoped. That's another complicated piece in this whole journey. So the struggle that I'm having as I listen to people speak and talk about their ideas on how we make this better or end human trafficking, is that I'm not really sure who else actually working with the victims. And you really have to work with them in this lifestyle and then outside of this lifestyle. And I feel that the best way to get them is how I became so involved into my place is a front piece. It's before it all happens. It's for women to know that the molestation is not their fault. And while we all say that, you'd be surprised. I also want them to know that, they were kind of set up for failure, that all these pieces make sense of where they are now because of what happened then. And if we can work through that, and if we can get mainstream U.S. mainstream America, especially wealthier individuals, or that think that those things don't happen in their neighborhood, if we can get them on board to understand and to talk about it and not make that a shameful piece, then I think it's a start to healing. I struggle with the fact that these women are broken in a way that we will never understand, because they have experienced more than you and I can ever imagine. When you break through all those pieces, they are incredibly strong human beings. They get diagnosed always with bipolar. It's usually post-traumatic stress. They also are diagnosed with a lot of other mental health issues. The struggle with that is, while they're being diagnosed, they're using. And so you can't get a clear diagnosis while you're using. And so they're labeled in ways that make it even harder to place them in certain programs. The other piece of the puzzle for us that I continually see, and Cindy and I talked about this morning, is the lack of us all working together. I find that organizations, it becomes about me and the organization instead of becoming about the woman. And I'm sorry, I keep talking about women. I don't work with men, I work with women. So we have to make it about them. And the sooner that we all work together, you find your area and you work in that area. I know what I'm good at. I'm not good at education. I'm not a good speaker. I just have a passion, and I love the women that I work with. Law enforcement, you think they know what's going on. They don't see an exploited woman as an exploited woman. And I know you've talked about it a lot, and I could have a whole conversation about how that operates. I'd love to have a whole conversation about Polk County and their prostitution bus and the shaming that goes on with that. But I want to stick with just where the woman is and where my passion and my expertise comes in. And that's while they're in the life. There's a structure that happens in this environment. It's a very gang-related environment. And whoever is in charge of the environment, we'll call him the pimp. He's really the dope boy and the pimp, and he's running it all, but he barely touches anything. But everybody's definitely afraid of him. You have women that are just driving all the dope area to area. You have women that are selling their bodies. It's a very normal curve to go from Atlanta to Jacksonville to Orlando, Miami, Tampa, and back. And they circulate that all the time. They go from place to place. Or sometimes I just stay in Orlando. I could tell you every major player. It's not my role to take the player down. It's my role to get the person help. So I hope all of that made sense. I do think I think if we can work together to stay in our lane, but work in healing the person instead of everybody dividing out where they are, it would be a great start to helping with the healing of the person. And I think that while we're doing the international thread, and it's each country has their own issues. In the United States, ours is how the women become involved in the trade to begin with. So I hope that was answer the questions in the 5 to 7 minutes that I was supposed to speak. I just wanted to reiterate again, it takes 7 times usually for a woman to get it. 1 in 3 women are molested, but if you look at the statistics in jail, they're 98%. So there's a good basis for you to take as you move forward. Maybe one other thing to throw in there is the fact that we send them to programs where we want them to look like us, and their world doesn't look like us. So we really have to work at creating and working and programs working at understanding that piece of it so that the women have a better shot at their long-term healing. So all that being said, I really appreciate you giving me an opportunity to speak. I'm hoping that my passion with the women that I work with came out, and I was wondering if you had any questions that I could answer that maybe.
Yeah. Thank you, Tammy. Thanks for that. I think you made a really good point, and frankly, and I know Colin put something in the chat, and I'm guessing that Matt's going to say something as well. Is in the several years that I've been working in this as a Rotarian and being that sort of objective participant in conversations. I don't have any, to your point, kind of that skin in the game, or I'm not looking for funding, those kinds of things. I am continually, it's interesting to me, and frankly, it's a little bit frustrating that I do hear that, all the time we need to work together. And then very quickly it turns into this implied competition or conflict. And so I think that if we as a club, as we talk about what our role is as a club, if we start looking at that very seriously, and if that's our role, is to start breaking down those barriers between organizations, or sort of encouraging organizations or entities to come together to the table and talk to each other in a safe place, be that mediator, if you will, to allow those conversations to say, look, we aren't competing, we're complementing each other. That it's a huge challenge, and I haven't figured out the solution to it, but it is sort of that oxymoron to me. Is on one hand I hear people say we have to work together, and then on the other hand it's like, well, but we're not going to work together because you're in my lane, or perceived lane. So it is a big issue. Matt, you have something very wise to say, I'm sure.
I don't know whether it's wise or not. Tammy, thank you so much for that. I years ago was doing work in New York City with women who were walking in the street, and all the things that you said were absolutely true in terms of the molestation and so forth. But my comment is more on the collaboration side. I've been working on this for 35 years and still struggle with that. And one of the things that we started to do here in Asia was to avoid the jealousy and the, if I give information to you, then it's going to give you an advantage and you're going to get more money than me factor is we got the donors to give money to a consortium of groups that were working in the same location, and it was dependent upon them working together. And so what they were able to do as a result of this is figure out how to seamlessly provide services, because many of the services were complementary. But if they were done separately, there wasn't that link between them. Now, people argue that perhaps that's too much manipulation from the donors, but the donors came to us and said, we're as frustrated as everyone else. How can we use the role that we have to address this? And the first thing we said was, we need to teach you guys what you need to know, because there's a lot of misconceptions about what you think human trafficking is. And you pointed out a number of them. And then after that, we had the donors sit down with a consortium of different organizations to talk about how they could collaborate together, and then the funding was given afterwards. So there are creative ways that perhaps this type of thing could be addressed. That's just one example.
I love it.
They don't identify even. I've been working on a case, because when they're arrested, a lot of times in very large cases, and I know, well, you don't know Jess's story. She's made it very public that it was a large case. It's a dance, not all the women, well, most of the women that were arrested in that case. There were 25 people arrested overall. Some of them went much higher than anybody knows. Some were charged with, they were drivers, but they were being exploited in the exact same way. So I don't know if they go under labor. A lot of the women that are, if they have a prostitution charge, as crazy as it sounds, I'm thrilled, because it's so much easier for me to show law enforcement that they've been exploited. They get arrested on theft and paraphernalia and drugs. And so nobody wants to take a look, but they're connected to enormous people. And so while it's hard to have somebody testify, it's a freeing moment for them as well, and a complicated piece. And that would be a whole nother segment of how the system works. I think a key to every organization is you have to have a survivor. And I don't know what word you should use. Jess likes overcomer. You just need somebody that has been in that life. It's hard to make decisions. They see things so differently. And sometimes, 25 years ago is very different than now. So you need to keep people that are really invested, because things, even in the way people write ads, if I'm looking for somebody I've heard might have passed away, I know how to look at an ad. I know how to look for ads to find them. Even what they're saying in ads is different. So you have to constantly stay on top of words and meanings and areas. So I do think it's important as you move forward to have somebody that really understands, so that you're bouncing ideas off of them if it's a good idea to begin with. For example, oh, help me, because I just went blank. Backpage. They took it off. They made a big deal about it. The problem with that is Backpage was safe for the women, because the more people that actually wrote a comment about that person, the safer that person was. So as crazy as that sounds, it forced women to go back and walk on the street. And that's the most dangerous area there is. And while we all thought that was a fabulous idea for the safety of the women that weren't out of that lifestyle, it was very dangerous, and death rates went up. And then a bunch of other my OnlyFans, list crawlers, there's a million other pages. So, we think we're really handling something, but we're really not. So having people that really know how it operates and able to see the flip side of it is important. one other thing I will share with you is that the busiest time for women is between 3 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the morning, and they call it happy hour. And that's because the bars close, but also men that are looking for sex tell their families that they're going to the gym, and that's when they buy women. So that's the busiest time of this entire 24-hour period that our women go through. The highest amount of deaths, the highest amount of brutalization, and the most money made. So, it's a complicated business. And the women are so worthy to be loved. And I think we miss that part of it in wanting to help. Sometimes it's really walking the path with them. And Cindy can attest with our journey with Jess. And when we talk about working together, I spent 5 years with her in jail, then 4 years. And then she goes to a program and Cindy meets her. I didn't have any opportunity when they had issues. It would have been great. I know who she ran with, who was healthy, who was not. If we had connected and kept up, and then when she moved to the next stage, Cindy and I actually connected the entire time and were able to bounce off ideas and all work as a group. That's more what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Tammy, you and Cindy make a great with your story with Jess is, it sort of circles back to, I think, my president's letter in May around being a mother. And I think that sometimes we get overwhelmed, and I'm a systems thinker. So when, creating a club and creating the systems and then, I love that. And I get energized by that. But when I look at this issue to your, it is to all of we all, understand how big this issue is and this travesty is. And there are times that I sit back and think it's overwhelming. What are we going to do? What kind of an impact can we do? But you are a great reminder that it's one person at a time. That if we can, help one person, whether it's a few young boys in a fishing village in Lake Volta that are being used to go support the fishing industry, or a Jess in the United States, that if we can impact the lives of one person at a time, then yeah, we'll get there. It won't be tomorrow and it won't be overnight, but that's where we can take some comfort that we're doing what we can. So thank you. Any other questions or comments?
We keep speaking and about Matt and Tammy and everybody, about Karen, about collaboration. And what Annette and I realized, and it sort of just slammed us from the minute we walked onto our booth, is that there are so many organizations, so many people who have a passion for, but if you decide that you're going to have to stay in your lane because you want whatever that fills you up with, it's not going to work. And so we either, I guess a strong statement, but who I am, have to learn to work together. If I do what I do, I'm going to stay in my lane and do it well, but I'm going to bring in whoever it is that I can. I've spoken to Matt about this several times. Also, Rosie Cataldo, it's been, you do this, but you do it well, and then call me if you want me to do my part. Or let's just get in touch with each other, because with 11,000 people at Rotary, 98% of the people that came up were doing programs with Interact Girls or Rotaract Girls, but we would love to learn how to do that in our club. Well, what can your club work with our club? We have to collaborate. And Rotary, especially this convention we were at, this is the place that it all has to come together. And we don't understand, even when we sat having breakfast with people from all over the world, why isn't anybody collaborating in the United States? And I think it's a really good question. And I think I just think it's important, because we're such a diverse group. We have to figure out how do we do this? Not just by bringing in different people, but if I speak on this and you speak on that, but your thing is getting grants and your thing is, we cannot be competitive with each other, whether it's made to be political or whether it's made to be religious or whatever. These aren't political and religious issues. These are people issues.
Michael,
Go ahead, Annette.
yeah,
Annette
I wasn't
looks
sure
like-
whether it was Michael or Annette that did raise their hands first, but.
And then you go ahead. I'll follow.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we're having the same thought, Michael. I actually think that the process we're going through with the projects group it can be a piece of this collaboration. And that's something that I think as a group we should be talking about is what does this partnership look like when we decide one of these organizations we want to get behind? And how do we help people identify which organization they need to connect with? And I think that that's the beginning of how collaboration should look. Since we're an international Rotary group, we really can be, to me, maybe we can be the funnel that helps us all collaborate. Michael, you go.
Thanks, Annette. And yes, I am riffing off of what you said. The thing that really struck me, just like Cindy said, and Annette, so many different voices, all talking, sort of saying the same, sort of like the Tower of Babel. But the key, I think, and I've already sent a note to Michelle, and I want to bring this up at a board meeting, et cetera. It's not. We talk a lot about what do we want to do? Oh, we want to have collaboration, but we have to think about how. And how, as Karen has said, is in the nitty gritty. It's in the little tiny steps, and how do you layer in those little tiny steps? And I think that if we go this year, if we get a focus on that and we can get a coordinated, shouldn't use that word probably, we get a program that we all can buy into, and hey, you're going to do that, Shirley, and Matt's going to do this, and Helen's going to do that. Everybody's understands what we're doing and why we're doing it. Then we're going to start making some progress. And anybody who's interested in this, that's what this Disruptor Task Force is about, right? We want to disrupt this system that sits there and says, oh, I'm just by myself. I need just like three people who would work on this. And your goal is strictly to build a plan. Sorry for the recruiting talk.
Always take a recruiting opportunity, Michael. Good job. All right. Any other comments or questions? All right. Well, thank you, Tammy, for your passion. Definitely from the chats that were coming through, definitely did come through. So thank you for your comments, your perspective, and most importantly, what you're doing for those women whose lives you are impacting. So thank you for your service in that area.